So my personal goal would be to get to the point where everybody around the world is so aware of the crisis facing our coral reefs that they're all stepping up to take action, and I'm no longer needed. The Florida Reef Tract is the third largest barrier reef in the world. It's actually the only barrier reef in the continental United States. It runs from north of Miami, up in Broward County, right down past the Dry Tortugas. It's about 320 miles long. Its current state is pretty dire. There are still some patches of reef which are vibrant, healthy, full of life and very beautiful, and a lot of divers and snorkelers come down here to visit them. But we've lost the majority of the populations of the once dominant species. So the Florida Reef Tract used to be dominated by populations of the branching corals, the acropora. These are the staghorn and elkhorn corals. We now have lost around 97 to 98% of their populations. We've got 2 to 3% of them left. It also has a significant commercial and economic value as well. The Florida Reef Tract underpins tourism here in the Florida Keys. It underpins fisheries, recreational and commercial fisheries. It underpins the dive tourism that generates a huge amount of money for Florida's economy. Also, the Florida Reef Tract provides a critical natural barrier for the coastline. So in times of high water energy, when we have big storms like hurricanes coming through here, the Florida Reef Tract actually serves to protect the coast. It will slow down that wave energy, so the waves will break, and when they arrive at the coast, they'll be less strong, so causing less damage. So the reef is actually vital in protecting coastal infrastructure, which is worth billions of dollars. So despite the fact that coral reefs, and specifically the Florida Reef Tract, has a huge dollar value associated with its ecosystem services, the fact is there are not enough efforts being made to protect and restore coral reefs around the world. Imagine if the coral reefs were a forest and we could see before our eyes all of the temperate forests around the world declining by 50%. We've now lost 50% of the world's coral reefs in the last 30 years. If we'd lost 50% of the world's forests in the last 30 years, people would actually be able to be paying attention. So the Coral Restoration Foundation method of reef restoration is relatively simple. So step one is we hang coral fragments onto the coral trees. Step two is we leave them and we let them grow to a reef-ready size. Step three, once they're reef-ready, we harvest them from the trees and we move them to an outplanting site. Step four, we fix the corals directly onto the degraded reef structure. And step five, we let them grow and we monitor how healthy they are. There are a multitude of threats facing coral reefs around the world, many of which are local stresses, and there are, of course, some significant global stresses. Local stresses on coral reefs include things like overfishing, pollution, nutrient runoff, direct damage from divers or snorkelers or people dropping anchors on these reefs. There are also, of course, some incredibly significant global threats, climate change being one. So as a result of human activity, we've increased the levels of carbon dioxide in the environment significantly. This is causing oceans to warm and to become more acidic. Our coral outplant numbers have increased exponentially year on year. We went from outplanting just a couple of corals some years ago to planting 23,000 corals in 2018 alone. Our survivorship is extraordinary. We're looking at, across all sites and all species, of a survivorship of just under 80%. I think the most important thing really is for people to find the actions that make sense to them, that speak to them, whether that's reducing your plastic consumption, reducing your carbon footprint, carpooling, making these kinds of choices, but really finding the thing that makes sense for you.